Alan, do we have your guy ready to go? All right, nice enough
We
to join
got
us.
him.
We appreciate it. Spotrac contributor and NBA capologist, among other things, Keith Smith with us. How are you today, Keith? Are you ready for the deadline?
I think so. Yeah, today came kind of fast and furious, midday there, but it was yeah, it's all good.
Can we
It's
just
yeah,
ask
we're,
you,
we're ready to go.
before we get into what may happen, how about what did happen? What's the best thing and the worst thing about the DeAndre Hunter trade from Sacramento's standpoint?
The best thing is DeAndre Hunter is a good player. It's one of those things where I think it's now getting talked about like this guy is awful and can't play at all. He can still play. He's had a down shooting year, but that seems like a blip based on where he's been historically. So I think that's the good thing. The worst thing is the Kings took on money in this trade, and that feels a little bit off if they're going to be starting a reset and a rebuild. That feels a little bit off.
Keith, what do you think about Sabonis's contract? And if you were the Kings, would you do any deal with the Raptors that did not include a first rounder?
It depends on what I have to take back salary wise. If I'm having to take back Jakob Pertl and like Emmanuel Quickly's contracts, I definitely need draft capital in that because those two guys, their contracts extend further out than Sabonis's does. I don't think they're very good value on their contracts. Quickly less so than Pertl. Pertl's I'm really worried about because he's now got this back issue that's been a recurring thing, and when you have that going on, that's tough because we've seen over the years back stuff doesn't really clear up. Usually it's something that kind of lingers and sticks around for a while. So I'm nervous about that part. If it's Barrett that comes in, that contract one's a little shorter. I think you could maybe kind of mix it where, okay, we're kind of trading now Sabonis's money for Pirtle's money, and we do get RJ Barrett. That's probably okay, but I would be very cautious if it's the other construction.
Mm-hmm. That's Keith Smith from Spotrac and the Front Office Show. Keith, wanted to ask you about the possibility here after Memphis made the deal they made and amassed all this cap space. What do you think is the likelihood of Memphis getting involved in the Toronto-Sacramento talks and saying, look, we'll take Pirtle here, but we're going to need a little something. A, do you think Memphis would be interested in that? And B, what's your best guess as far as what they would need to get involved?
Yeah, they might. I mean, it seems like the Grizzlies are turning towards a rebuild. We'll see. That's very much what it feels like with the trade of Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Utah Jazz. So at that point, yeah, I think the Memphis, you could probably entice them to, hey, if we send you a pick to kind of eat Pirtle's contract, you good with that? And if they're willing to do that, then sure, then you can kind of move that way in that kind of thing. But that's where it becomes, all right, would we rather have the value ourselves with the pick? Because if you're the Kings, you're turning towards a rebuild if you trade all these guys away. And why not kind of take the value for yourself versus moving it around? And maybe one of the things we've seen with the Thunder, part of why they grew so quickly was they were able to bring guys in with a pick attached, rehab their value, then trade them and get a pick on the other side. If you're able to do that with a couple guys, then you're in a little bit better shape as well.
Keith, when it comes to the Kings, a lot of people have been saying, hey, Scott Perry made a bit of a mistake with the Dennis Schroeder contract, and he righted that wrong. It did cost them Keon Ellis, but they righted that wrong, and they moved on and got DeAndre Hunter. My thought process has been maybe the Kings underestimated how hard it was going to be to move off of some of the contracts that they had, as in DeMar DeRozan, which has been considered a pseudo-expiring, and Malik Monk. I know early on with the Pistons and Schroeder, they didn't want Malik Monk. But how would you assess the contracts that the Kings had? Were they always this bad, or did you go into the season thinking, man, I thought there'd be some interest in DeMar DeRozan? Was it worse than you thought, or did you always think, yeah, Scott Perry's going to have to move Dennis Schroeder and include their best asset and have to give up a pick to move off of Dario Saric? What happened there?
Yeah, the contracts weren't great. I think the challenge is like with Schroeder, for example, they invest in him, then felt like a week later, turned around and signed Russell Westbrook, and then did another deal, and then then stopped playing Keon Ellis, and then Dennis Schroeder was in the starting lineup, out of the starting lineup. A guy like DeRozan has been kind of consistently there and I think has played pretty well again for another season. So his I'm not as worried about because of, like you said, it's almost like a pseudo expiring. There's not a lot of guaranteed money on there for next year. So you're in a position where I think you can make that one work. And then Sabonis has always been a little rough. Zach LaVine, as I said it the other night, he's overpaid, but he's still very good at what he does. And I think now we're in a position where we're going to see him opt in. They're going to hang on to him because if I'm the Kings, what I'm looking at here is now he's an expiring contract, and an expiring contract always has value, even, no matter kind of what it's going on with it. So that's where I think that will have some value in and of itself. But yeah, it's just been a weird production. Then you mentioned Malik Monk. There was a period of time where he was out of the rotation and wasn't really playing, and it didn't make a lot of sense because it's like, even if you're just trying to build this guy's trade value up, why are we benching him when he's healthy? Like, why is he a healthy scratch? It's just very weird stuff where it doesn't seem like the front office and the coaching staff have always been in lockstep on these guys.
That's Keith Smith, a great follow at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, I follow you on Twitter, and I mentioned that for this reason. It looks like the Kings may be stockpiling cap space in 27. And I think one of your pet peeves on Twitter is when people assume that, with cap space, all you can do is sign free agents. So
yeah.
What is the value beyond that of having cap space, please?
Yeah, I like to go to the Simpsons meme where the bus driver says, "Don't make me tap the sign," and you fill it in with cap space can be used for more than just signing free agents. You could trade for contracts there. You can act as a facilitator for contracts. You can go get guys you want when you have cap space. It's almost like a pseudo free agent signing. We've seen that happen over the years as well. So that's where we're in this weird kind of transitional period in the NBA where some of the best players don't make it to free agency because the extension rules have improved enough and they're so lucrative and guys just want to lock into money. They, you throw, hey, here's 100, 200 million in some cases. We're approaching 300 million for some of these guys. They're not going to say no to that because, right, wrong, or indifferent, we all know the way it works in the NBA is I sign, I take my money, and if I don't like the way things are going in a year or two, I ask for a trade. And everybody's kind of, all right, that's just how we're going to do it. So it is a little tough on that one where it is, you try to get people to understand, like, it's still better to have it than not. Unless you're, a good team, you shouldn't be tearing down good teams. But if you're a bad team, you want to have cap space because that just increases your flexibility to do a whole lot of things.
Keith, Whitey and I have gone back and forth on the idea of a player and how much time they have on their contract and whether or not that helps or hurts the assets that they would get back in a trade. So I'm talking about control versus commitment. How do you break down the idea of a Domantas Sabonis right now, where if you traded for him, well, we have him for 3 more years, but on the other side, oh, wait, we got to pay him for 3 more years. What's that sweet spot of wanting to have control of a player, but also not wanting to commit to a crazy dollar amount? What's that sweet spot?
Yeah, I can't give you a straight answer to that, and I promise I'm not trying to skip out on answering, but it's very player dependent. It matters who it is. If it's like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander right now, or Nikola Jokic, or Luka Doncic, pay him whatever you want. I don't care. Go give him a couple more tree planting contracts and add a little bit on top if you need to, right? Let's just go crazy with those guys because they're worth it. But in the case of a guy like Sabonis, it's a near max contract for the next 3 seasons. And I think this is player fit years, dollars. It all matters. If he's on the right team where the right kind of defensive players are next to him, I think Domantas Sabonis is still really good. For my money, he is still the second best facilitating big man in the league behind Jokic, who's like in his own category that, we've never seen before. And then you get Sabonis in here behind him. He's still an elite rebounder, and he's not a bad offensive player. The problems come. He's not a good defender. He's undersized to be a center. He's not really a rim protector. He can't move well enough to play out on the perimeter defensively. So you get kind of stuck. But I think what people look at and are like, well, he's awful. He's not great in this setup because he doesn't have the right guys around him. I think he's overpaid for what he is. It's hard to have a big man that's paid that much that can anchor your defense. But I think I think if for his case, for like probably 85-90% of the league, they would look at it and say, yeah, if it was a 1 or 2 years left on his deal, we'd feel a lot better about it. Where it's that third year, I think that's where some teams are going to balk, and that's where it gets a little hard to move.
Keith, I remember last year, Keith Smith is with us. I remember last year watching ESPN, at the deadline, and their big story as the NBA trade deadline hit was Kevin Durant is not going anywhere. It wasn't what happened. It was what wasn't going to happen. How likely, if I may ask you, who knows? Don't want to put you on the spot, but how likely are we at the deadline tomorrow to see ESPN saying Giannis is not going anywhere?
Yeah, Thursday, to be clear. Let's not make it tomorrow. I'm not ready for if it's tomorrow. But yeah, I think I'm going to say 50-50 right now. There seems to be some motivation. We saw the Minnesota Timberwolves make a very interesting trade today where they got themselves under the first apron and got off some salary. We've heard they've been very aggressive that they want Giannis. And one of the things that's been kind of talked through with the Timberwolves is, well, they can't get there. There's no real path because they're over the apron. It's hard for them to make the money work. But now they're in a position where maybe they get something done. But it's also been said that Milwaukee's intention here is, let's canvass the league. Let's find out what everybody's offering. And then when we get into the summer, when it's easier to trade a guy who makes $54 million, when it's easier to make a big trade that's going to involve multiple players moving around, probably 3 teams. If we're looking at this, the way it'll probably go down, it's just easier to do those things in the summer. We'll lay all the groundwork now, and then we'll execute come July. But normally I would have said it's like 80-20 that he won't go anywhere because it's always more likely that big of a trade. But there seems to be enough momentum here and teams seem to be lining things up that maybe we are closing in on a Giannis trade.
Oh, go ahead, Whitey.
No, I was just reacting.
I was going to say, Ja Morant, earlier on, Keith, you said that certain players nowadays, after a couple years, if they don't like what's going on, they'll just ask out. Well, Ja Morant is saying that if he goes anywhere, he wants to go to the Heat. He would not, re-sign Sacramento, whatever the case is, because right now he's looking like the Will Smith Fresh Prince of Bel-Air scene where nobody else is in the house. He's just there by himself because the Grizzlies have traded everyone. How much leverage does somebody like Ja Morant have right now? Is it just a bit of posturing? If the Kings were interested, would they actually be turned off from Ja Morant because of what he said with 3 years left on his deal, and how the Grizzlies would kind of react to Ja saying, well, I want to go to the Heat and nowhere else? How would all that actually play out?
Yeah, and if Ja's Will Smith in that situation, he's not in the house very often either. Let's just be reasonable about this. Like, that's the problem. If Ja Morant was healthy more often, there'd be much more of a market for him. And quite frankly, Memphis probably wouldn't be looking to do anything as far as trading him. That's the issue, is you got to find a team that is going to, right? It's people in this league always look around and say, you know what? He hasn't been healthy for them, but he might be healthy for us. Let's, make a swing. We can get him right. We can get him on the court, and that's happened with any number of players in the history of the league. So that's kind of where we're at with the Grizzlies with Ja Morant, where it is, the Grizzlies are kind of looking at it and saying, all right, we canvassed, we put it out there. Ja Morant's available. We didn't get overwhelmed with trade offers because otherwise, you know what? He'd have been traded by now. And I think now what they might be looking at is, all right, in the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, we got 3 first-round picks. We got in, some younger guys. Maybe now we can do more of what Trae Young went for, which is expiring salary and a nice role player, and we just kind of move on that way. They may be a little bit more open to that. Problem is, if he starts throwing around, I only want to go here and that's it, well, that's going to tank his trade value even deeper, because then other teams are like, hey, I'm not trading for a guy who, if he's not happy, is he going to show up? What's it going to look like? I don't need that problem. And that's where I think from Memphis's side is like, hey, you can't do this. Like, you just got to be here, and go. And that's why I think the Grizzlies have almost turned to, all right, we'll figure it out. I think the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade today, though, really changed things from Memphis. I had kind of been in a spot where we're not going to see a John Morant trade. I think if we don't see one in the next couple of days, by Thursday, we'll see a John Morant trade over the summertime. I don't think we're going to see him play very much for the Memphis Grizzlies anymore.
How about that? Keith Smith. Yeah, by the way, trade deadline countdown, 1 day, 19 hours, 42 minutes, and 36 seconds. I know I got ahead of myself there. Keith, thank you. And listen, if you're, when a trade breaks and you're wondering, what does this all mean? Keith Smith is a great follow at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter. Thank you, Keith. We appreciate your time and hope to talk to you again soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Great stuff, Keith.
Absolutely.
Wow.
John Morant.